Alright, welcome back everybody to my channel. I know it's been a while, but it's taken me some time to refocus, but I'm back. And today we're going to be talking about a green menace that wreaks chaos and destruction wherever he goes, plucking trains from the railroad tracks and terrifying the people within. Seriously? Today is about a new movie called Gojira Minus One, or Godzilla here in the United States. But I have been a fan of Gojira for a long time. I've seen the majority of the movies. I know there's many different timelines and franchises, and I really enjoyed them all to some degree. Gojira Minus One is definitely a high point. The first thing you're going to notice when you go and watch the movie is that it's subtitled and not dubbed like Shin Godzilla. I had not read any reviews, watched any trailers. I just knew that it existed and that it was directly from Japan and not from Hollywood. So I was intrigued, and it had gotten pretty good reviews, and what tiny bit I had seen, Gojira looked great. So I was like, hey, Chicago, let's go watch that movie. But there's one exception. There is a little bit in the movie where that's in English, American English, and it's a radio broadcast updating people on the war. Gojira Minus One takes place in World War II, and, the final years of World War II and a few years following. It is pretty much the same time frame as the original movie, 1954's Gojira. And it has a much more serious tone than Shin Godzilla did. That's probably the movie I'm going to compare it to the most, because I think that is the last Gojira movie we got directly imported from Japan prior to this one. I'm going to flip-flop between calling it Gojira and Godzilla, but I do prefer to call him Gojira, and but the movie is called Godzilla Minus One here in the States. But anyhow, in Gojira Minus One, it's a much more serious take on the franchise, and we've gotten in a little bit anyway. I do enjoy the American movies and the camp that they bring. It's a mixture of camp and seriousness, like a lot of the Gojira movies, although some Gojira movies are mostly camp. This one, though, is a much more grounded, down-to-earth. It does focus mostly on one character. There's a strong supporting cast that's kept small, and I think that really helps to keep things more interesting. The King of Monsters movie, and I have not seen Kong vs. Godzilla, the newest one, so please forgive me. I'm a terrible Gojira fan. But with a more serious tone comes more character development. That's one thing I find a lot of Gojira movies are lacking. While the movies focus on the titular character's experiences at the end of World War II and the few years following, there is a small core cast of main characters that are interesting in themselves. I do find that their reactions and their emotions seem based in reality and seem fitting for the situation, given their vantage point. Some people were in the war, some people were not, and they all have their own takes on things that don't seem wildly off for the character. Okay, this one's going to be a little spoilery, but the one scene that I thought the difference in tone between Shin Gojira and Gojira Minus One was painfully obvious was in the boardroom scene from Shin Gojira compared to there's a town hall meeting in Minus One, and you could compare the characters in the way that Shin Gojira had a bigger room full of crazy caricatures of people, most of which were there just for comic relief, whereas Minus One had a mishmash of military and civilians, and they all had valid concerns, and they were all honest with each other, and they came up with, ultimately came up with a plan that seemed to make sense, and it was rooted in the technology of the day. It wasn't some crazy sci-fi hidden away experiment. It was something that could conceivably have been conceived at the time period. Just a quick note, one of the things I found interesting is that they mention the U.S. conflict with Russia a few times, which is something that was still ongoing throughout my childhood because I'm old. I'm very, very old. The origin story was pretty true to the original. I hesitate to call it a reimagining. It was more like a revamping. The storyline is pretty much the same as the original. Maybe a little less information is directly given, but there's more detail overall on Gojira's mythos, I guess you could say, or how the people would understand the mythos. They don't have knowledge that they shouldn't have, or that particular soldier or that particular civilian wouldn't have. You know, we know that he was created by atomic blasts, but the characters in the movie don't. And in keeping with the original movie, the appearance of Gojira's CGI model is very close to the original costume, or at least it does look more like the original Gojira than the American movies, as of late, have made him look. Although those movies are pretty faithful adaptation of him, I do actually kind of prefer Godzilla Minus One's Gojira design. One thing that I really loved about the design is they made him move like the original Gojira. The suit actor would take these staccatoed steps, and they emulated that perfectly with the CGI. The original suit actor, Haru Nakajima. My apologies to his family for mispronouncing his name. And they also kept Gojira much closer to his original size of 50 meters. I think he's 50.1 in this movie. He does start off a little smaller, spoilers, but he grows a little bit throughout the movie, and he ends up at about 50 meters, which is the smallest he's been in a while. Most movies tend to increase his size, but in this one, he decreases once and he stays that height 50 meters. He's not 150 or whatever crazy height they've been making him now, which is fine. He's a scary monster, but he could be a scary monster at 50 meters just as easily to us. Yeah, Shin Gojira made it a point to show him growing from a hatchling all the way to a full-grown monster, and stopped his growth cycle right before he turned into people. Yeah, Shin Gojira was weird. It's very, very weird. The way that Gojira's back spikes lit up seemed rather interesting to me anyway. It seemed to be unique in that they lit up in stages rather than just glowing. Most movies, they just glow. Sometimes they don't glow at all. But it would start from the tip of his tail all the way to the back of his head with his spikes or spines extending a little bit along the way. Apparently, I heard that started in the late 90s cartoon. I don't know if that's accurate. He didn't do it all the time in the 90s cartoon, but it's been a while since I've seen it, so somebody check that and leave angry comments. I loved the camera angles in this movie. I know that's a silly thing to really geek out about, but usually you see a worm's eye view or a bird's eye view. People on the street versus people in planes, or just the camera floating there for some reason. It's those are fine shots, and they're all great, and they all serve their purpose, but it was really great to see this one scene in particular where there's a news crew on top of a building watching Gojira at an angle I don't think we've ever seen in a Gojira movie. I could be wrong, but it was just so cool to see the destruction, see the monster, and I don't know, it's perspective. Probably the last thing I'd like to mention is the soundtrack. It was amazing. They used a lot of the musical scores from the original movie, or at least the main theme. It gave me this nerd rush. I got giddy with nerdy excitement to the point where my eyes teared up. I was so excited. It really got me hype, and it still fits. It still fits. I loved it. More of this, please. And how would I rate the movie overall? I would say Out of a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it a 9. Because no movie gets a 10. I loved it. It has its flaws, sure, but so do all movies. I loved it. From the acting, the storyline, the believable characters, the tone, the true to the original mythos and design. It was all beautiful. I mean, I love pretty much all things Gojira. I mean, look at this. Even this guy, even Zilla, apparently, what he's been called. I fell hard for this movie. It's not even that good, but I still enjoy it. Gosh, I even have the board game too. I think I got this at work, and I had a pillow too that my old family dog Benji used to love. But I would love to get some newer merch, but there's just so much Gojira merch. What do I get? I don't know. But thank you all for watching. I hope to do a new video soon for you. Do want to talk about my trans journey, talk about my motorcycle riding, and who knows what else. Might have a few guests on every once in a while. But anyhow, thank you all for joining, and I'll see you in the next video.